Tonight, a royal reception in Canberra where the King's message was overshadowed by a senator's outburst and removal.
I wanted to send a clear message to the King of England that he's not the king of this country.
New guidelines crack down on so-called forever chemicals in Australia's drinking water. Qantas facing a multi-million-dollar compensation bill over illegal sackings during the pandemic. And food for thought, how turning a garage into a pantry is helping families in need. This is ABC Late News. Hello, I'm Jade Barker. First, an angry protest from Independent Senator Lydia Thorp has shaken the parliamentary reception for the King and Queen in Canberra. It disrupted an otherwise carefully coordinated day in the nation's capital, where thousands of well-wishers gathered for a chance to meet the royal couple.
They died for king and country. And now the King honouring them. King Charles and Queen Camilla at the War Memorial in Canberra, starting a day of royal engagements in the capital. Outside, more than 4,000 people waited hours for a glimpse of the pair. Many enamoured.
God save the King.
Some, like 9-year-old alpaca Hefner, less so.
He's met a few famous people over his times.
On the forecourt of Parliament House, a more enthusiastic greeting. 21 shots, salutes and handshakes, with crowds camping out to be part of history. Prime Ministers past and present were inside the People's House for a parliamentary reception. As tributes were paid,
you have stood with us proudly in good times.
And gratefully received.
In my many visits to Australia, I have witnessed the courage and hope that have guided the nation's long and sometimes difficult journey towards reconciliation.
The extent of that highlighted just moments later.
Our phones, our scarves, our babies.
Independent Senator Lydia Thorp escorted out of the Great Hall.
This is not your land. This is not your land. You are not my kids.
MPs later condemned the interruption, which didn't mar the sense of occasion for those who'd gathered.
Is a head of state, no matter what people say.
I thanked her for coming all this way. I gave her a tea towel.
King Charles is only the second reigning monarch and the first ever king to visit Parliament House, following in the footsteps of his late mother, Queen Elizabeth, who opened this very building in 1988. King Charles then held private one-on-one sessions with Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and Opposition Leader Peter Dutton, before heading to the CSIRO and observing a simulated bushfire, the real version of which have dominated Australian summers. The climate-conscious king seeking to advance the environmental cause across his 16 visits to Australia.
There we go. Little pat gun.
Laying down more roots for future generations.
If the stomach doesn't get too hot.
Stephanie Dalzell, ABC News, Canberra.
Shortly after her protest at Parliament House, Senator Lydia Thorp spoke to the BBC, saying King Charles needed to do more to address the impact of colonisation in Australia.
How can he stand up there and say that he's the king of our country? He's stolen so much wealth from our people and from our land, and he needs to give that back. And he needs to entertain a conversation for a peace treaty in this country. We can lead that, we can do that, we can be a better country, but we cannot bow to the coloniser whose ancestors he spoke about in there are responsible for mass murder and mass genocide.
Is it his responsibility or is it Australia's responsibility to have a referendum and end his role as head of state?
Well, we've seen the government walk back treaty. We've seen the government walk back truth. Now, if he wants to do anything to allow peacemaking instruments here amongst First People and the coloniser, then he needs to show the way and he needs to instruct this parliament to treaty with First Peoples.
Australia is planning to dramatically cut what's considered to be safe levels of PFAS in drinking water. The so-called forever chemicals have been linked to cancer and take thousands of years to break down.
They're in our clothes, cooking products and makeup. PFAS chemicals have even made it into drinking water. Now health authorities are trying to limit that.
Our goal is to produce the highest quality evidence-based guidelines that will enable the states and the water suppliers to supply safe, clean water.
A growing body of research is linking long-term PFAS exposure to cancer and thyroid issues.
Every day of your life, 2 litres of water per day.
The proposed limits follow a crackdown in the US. Under the guidelines, the safe levels of 4 PFAS chemicals would be slashed, but PFOA, recently declared carcinogenic by the World Health Organization, would still be 50 times higher than America's limit. The forever chemicals have been used across the country, including in firefighting foam. But most drinking water has never been tested for PFAS, so the true extent of the problem remains unknown. However, recent samples taken in Sydney detected some of the chemicals at several water filtration plants.
Drinking water remains safe if it complies with the current guideline.
Authorities say the draft guidelines could mean one supply in the Blue Mountains would not be compliant, and there would likely be more.
I think there will be lots of communities that are out of compliance with that, and we will need to put in solutions.
Technology to remove the chemicals is costly.
The customer bills would increase to reflect the additional costs.
There are legal options available to us. We do want to make sure that the cost to the community of pollution is borne by the polluter.
The proposal's open for feedback and will be finalised by April next year. The onus then falls on state and territory governments to enforce any new standards. Xanthi Gregory, ABC News, Sydney.
Israel has carried out multiple strikes on Lebanon's capital after announcing it would target Hezbollah's financial operations. Shortly after the warning, explosions rocked Beirut. The Israeli Air Force hit at least 10 sites across the city, as well as targets in the Bekaa Valley in the east and near the border in the south. Meanwhile, in Gaza, hopes of a ceasefire are dwindling after an Israeli strike left 87 people dead or missing. Middle East correspondent Matthew Doran has more.
Explosions at the edge of Beirut's international airport, lighting a night sky blanketed in smoke.
We will be attacking a large number of targets in the next few hours and more targets later tonight.
The target, Al-Qad al-Hassan, a sanctioned non-profit the US says the Hezbollah militant group uses to manage its money. Also used by civilians, it has more than a dozen branches in the densely populated capital. It's a second straight day of strikes inside Beirut. Here, the IDF hitting what it says was a Hezbollah intelligence centre and weapons facility, killing 3 of the group's commanders.
The US Secretary of Defence Lloyd Austin says Washington wants Israel to scale back its strikes on its northern neighbour, particularly in and around Beirut, adding that the number of civilian casualties is simply far too high. These latest strikes suggest that plea from Israel's strongest ally have gone unheard.
All the while in Gaza, Israel's offensive in the north continues. The streets of Beit Lahia coated in ghostly grey, the dust of buildings once homes, now piles of rubble.
We were asleep around midnight when it suddenly felt like an earthquake hit the area.
Dozens killed by an Israeli strike in the northern Gaza city.
All those who were martyred here are children, women and displaced people who fled from other areas due to heavy strikes, seeking shelter in what they believed to be a safer place.
Children cowering in hospitals after what they've endured. The Israeli military accused Hamas of exaggerating the death toll and insisted the strike used precise munitions against a Hamas target. The killing of the group's leader, Yahya Sinwar, doing little to slow the relentless barrage in Gaza. Matthew Doran, ABC News, Jerusalem.
With just over a fortnight into the US presidential election, Elon Musk has started a multi-million-dollar giveaway to people who sign or share a petition he's started. But some, including the governor of swing state Pennsylvania, have raised concerns about whether it's legal.
Yeah. A life-changing giveaway or a criminal act. Elon Musk has jumped into the final weeks of the US election effort, starting a political campaign group with a petition backing free speech and gun rights. The businessman has been giving away a daily prize of $1 million to people who sign his petition. But those who sign also have to be registered voters in one of 7 so-called swing states that may decide the US election.
Definitely hound friends, family, acquaintances, people on the street, everyone you meet, to register. We've got to register.
I think it's something that law enforcement could take a look at. I'm not the Attorney General anymore of Pennsylvania, I'm the governor, but it does raise some serious questions.
People who are found to have induced others to register to vote with cash or lottery chances could face up to 5 years prison under US law. Mr. Musk says people who have signed the petition do not have to vote.
You just have to sign a petition saying you believe in the Constitution, which if you already believe in the Constitution, you're just signing something you already believe, and you can win $1 million. That's awesome.
You're a wealth of responsibility you are using to save speech, and we just all appreciate it. We really do. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Mr. Musk hasn't been alone in trying to get out the vote in Pennsylvania in new and unusual ways. State officials using Thai hippo Moo Deng to spruik postal votes. And Donald Trump has made a campaign stop at a McDonald's, claiming he had always wanted to work there, while casting doubt on Kamala Harris's stories of serving burgers as a student.
Now I have worked at McDonald's. I've now worked for 15 minutes more than Kamala. Okay, she never worked here.
Meanwhile, the Democrats were working to court communities of faith, speaking to congregations in the swing states of Georgia and Michigan.
It's wonderful. I feel blessed. I feel blessed.
This parable, the parable of the Good Samaritan, teaches us to love thy neighbor as thyself.
Last month, the Pew Research Center found Catholic and Protestant voters favour Donald Trump, and he's been closing the gap in an average of national polls, with numbers the Harris campaign may not have been loving. Lachlan Patrick, ABC News.
Lawyers say Qantas is facing a compensation bill of hundreds of millions of dollars for illegally sacking workers in the middle of pay negotiations. 1,700 ground crew, including baggage handlers and cleaners, will receive various payouts after being let go during the pandemic.
What a win! It was a day that these Qantas workers had been fighting for 4 years. Compensation for being illegally sacked when the airline outsourced their roles as they were preparing to strike.
I can put it behind me now, and it can pay bills that I didn't anticipate.
I expected to be there till I retired, and when this happened, it was an absolute shock.
1,700 SAC ground crew will now receive payouts for what they went through, ranging from $30,000 to $100,000 each.
Marriages have broken down as a result of this. People have lost houses. People have had distress, have had mental illnesses.
Workers will also be compensated for 1 year of lost work after the court found the airline would have legally outsourced their roles in 2021.
This is the spirit of Australia. You dig in when it gets tough and you don't give up. And here we are today having a massive victory.
Altogether, the airline is facing a big bill.
It'll probably end up somewhere between, say, $300 and $350 million in compensation.
While this might sound like a lot, this lawyer says that the company still saved cash by outsourcing the roles.
Well, I think what they've done was the right decision financially because it will have saved them money.
The airline had set aside $70 million for this legal battle, but now it has to go away and figure out the final bill. It says it'll be working with the union through a mediation process, and once again, it's apologised to its sacked workers. The airline is also facing a fine, which will be decided at a later date. Amelia Terzon, ABC News.
The NT government has revealed a significant and yet uncosted 4-year plan to build new jails and work camps to try and ease the pressure on the territory's strained prison system. As part of the plan, youth detainees would be moved from Alice Springs to Darwin. It's a proposal that is already facing criticism for taking young Aboriginal people from their land and families.
A prison close to bursting point, and the men tasked with trying to fix it.
We have seen an unprecedented growth in prison population over the last couple of years since I became Commissioner, almost a 400-person increase in that estate, which puts incredible pressure on our staff and our facilities.
With NT prisons already at capacity and prisoners stuck in police watch houses, a new plan's been rolled out to increase capacity by up to 3,000 beds over 4 years.
It's the largest infrastructure program that we've rolled out ever. It provides us with a range of correctional facilities of different security classifications across the NT, including new women's facilities and new work camps.
Among the plans, new work camps in Darwin and Katherine, women's prisons in Darwin and Alice Springs, and youth detainees will be shifted from Alice Springs to Darwin to free up beds for adults in Central Australia.
Bringing everyone to a central location will give us a better opportunity to offer better rehabilitation services to make sure those children have a better choice in life.
That is just absolutely disgraceful. It's a backward step. It's back to the future, returning kids to facilities that are insufficient.
They're in the process of being removed from the country, the land, the family, and all the resources that they need to learn about discipline, education and stuff is back home there.
The youth detainees are moving to the notorious Don Dale Detention Centre until a new youth facility opens as soon as next month. After that, Don Dale will be repurposed for adult men.
Nobody should be held in that facility. It should have been decommissioned and closed down a long time ago.
I certainly won't be putting my officers into a facility that I don't judge to be appropriate.
The government promises Don Dale will only be used for 2 more years, until its newly built prisons and work camps come into operation. Matt Garrick, ABC News.
As Queensland's election campaign gathers pace, the 2 main parties have again headed to the north of the state. Their focus has been health, with the LNP promising free vision, hearing and speech development checks for every child in kindergarten.
Fury at the gates. There was a more favourable audience inside. The man the LNP is pinning its hopes on leading them out of the political wilderness received a rapturous welcome from the party faithful. Law and order was at the centre of his pitch.
Adult crime, adult time.
David Crisafulli outlined further changes to the state's youth detention centres, including making education compulsory for all detainees.
The fact is, education is already mandatory in our detention facilities.
The average young offender in youth detention receives less than 3 hours schooling per day. We need to give them every chance to lift their ability to read and write.
But Mr Crisafulli wouldn't say how many extra staff would need to be hired or by when. He also promised to go harder on those who assault detention officers, introducing a minimum period of isolation but wouldn't call it solitary confinement.
We will consult with stakeholders, including the department, frontline staff, behavioural experts and police, to determine what the minimum period of isolation should be.
Mandatory sentencing and mandatory solitary confinement will not prevent a single crime.
David Crisafulli is making his case for change in a state that doesn't change hands that often. Labor has governed in Queensland for 30 of the past 35 years, and Mr Crisafulli is hoping to overcome the historical odds on Saturday. Mr Crisafulli was forced to address a social media post from his Barron River candidate, Bree James. After her poster was defaced, she wrote, "Even my banner is getting into the spirit and celebrating my German heritage."
It's disappointing, it's wrong, it's not funny. And I've expressed my view to her very clearly. She has expressed remorse and genuine remorse.
The post has been removed.
That's good, really good. I love Mutter. Who knew?
The Premier spent a low-key day mingling at Sunday markets in crucial seats. He's staying in Brisbane tonight. Kate McKenna, ABC News.
Remote communities in Outback, New South Wales suffering from power outages will be eligible for financial support after the state government issued a natural disaster declaration. Broken Hill and other parts of the far west have been disconnected from the grid for days following a wild windstorm. And now the sole backup generator providing them with power has started to trip.
The race is on to construct temporary replacements for these transmission towers knocked over during last week's huge storm. Until then, Broken Hill and much of the far west is relying on a single diesel-powered generator, forcing local businesses to manage their power consumption.
We had to cancel the Sunday evening shows and then now we're closed until the pylons are replaced and the normal electricity generation is back online.
The mines have ceased production since the storm hit, and workers won't return until power from the grid is restored. Miners have the option of using their annual leave or taking leave without pay.
It's a crazy situation to think that people are going to be impacted, you know, with not having any money come in each fortnight. It's going to hurt a lot of people, yeah.
The New South Wales government has now declared the incident a natural disaster, following pressure from Broken Hill's mayor and the Nationals.
What it will allow is government to compensate and give money back to the people. Also, increase the amount of services.
The Perillia mine is closed. There's 500 workers there being impacted. It's costing the mine $250,000 each and every day, and people are not quite sure what's happening.
The situation has been made worse by the lack of a second functioning generator, with Transgrid confirming that generator number 2 has been out of service since September, with it needing more work to get it back up and running again.
When you've got one connector in and one connector out in one of the most isolated cities, not just in Australia but in the entire world, you need to make sure that you've got backup generation.
The temporary towers aren't expected to be in place for at least another 2 weeks, leaving many here in the dark. Kokahala Connor, ABC News.
At a time when supermarket prices are under scrutiny and families are feeling the cost of living pinch, people are converting their front yards and garages into food pantries. Organisers of grassroots Perth charity Feed It Forward say their services are more in demand than ever.
In the foothills of Perth, Athena Powell's makeshift food pantry is open for business. She opens her Forestfield garage to people in need 5 days a week, and shoppers don't have to pay a thing.
It's grown tremendously with so many volunteers, so many more people needing the help.
A tough upbringing inspired Athena to start helping others in her community.
I was with my sister, so I helped raise her from the age of 10. She's 5 years younger than me. We had nothing. We had no food. We were lucky to have a roof over our house.
All the fresh produce is collected from supermarkets and producers and distributed to more than 500 volunteers by grassroots charity Feed It Forward, which was founded by Perth grandmother Monica Moringa in 2018.
We're currently saving about 70,000 kilos of food every week. We're feeding more than 10,000 directly with the help of up to 700 community groups who are also feeding community.
For single mum of 3, Cam, the food pantry in her local suburb has been a lifeline.
With retraining and not being able to work or wanting to get a better life, you've got to do it tough a little bit. So, yeah, with the cost of living and the rental crisis and stuff, there's not much left over at the end of the fortnight. So, this has definitely been a godsend for me and my boys.
The charity now has more than 100 local food pantries across the state. an increasingly important lifeline as costs continue to rise. Kate Lever, ABC News.
New Zealand is celebrating its first women's T20 World Cup triumph after defeating South Africa by 32 runs in the final in Dubai. Player of the tournament, Amelia Kerr, top scored with 43 as the White Ferns made 5 for 158. Kerr also took 3 wickets as South Africa was restricted to 9 for 126. It was a remarkable turnaround for New Zealand, who came into the tournament on a 10-game losing streak. It may feel like the competition has only just begun, but with AFLW finals around the corner, there's been mixed reactions to the league's trial of a condensed season. After squeezing 11 games into a 10-week home and away fixture, the players say something needs to change.
After a whirlwind 8 weeks, the AFLW finals picture is becoming clearer.
Not wanting to look too far ahead, but also knowing, we do need to keep winning.
Having won 4 in a row, Melbourne is one of the teams on the cusp of the top 8. The Demons will need to overcome an equally strong Hawthorn, which remains in contention for the minor premiership.
We've had a lot of success and a lot of change this year as well, and I think that it's about maintaining our form, not looking too far ahead, just taking it week by week.
Thursday's battle between the two sides will be the opening game of the competition's Indigenous round, capping off a controversial condensed home and away season with the 18 teams, each playing 11 games across 10 weeks.
I think that there's general consensus that the condensed fixture is probably not something that we'd like to continue with. It just puts a lot of strain on the players and on the clubs themselves.
The league has a guaranteed minimum of 12 matches per team next season and is looking at bringing the season forward to an earlier start to alleviate the fixture crunch.
And hopefully we've learned from this year from a time slot point of view from broadcasting, we can take those learnings forward, but supportive of playing as much football as possible.
It's obviously been a bit of a tough period, the condensed fixture with concussion and injury. We've obviously seen key players go out and find it hard to get up. But I think the overarching philosophy is we want to be playing more footy.
There'll be more footy in more places this weekend, with Darwin and Cairns hosting matches on the first week of the Indigenous round. Fraser Fife, ABC News, Melbourne.
Brisbane is in for a partly cloudy day ahead, mostly sunshine for Sydney. Canberra also will see mainly clouds. In Melbourne, a mostly sunny day. Shower or 2 in Hobart. Partly cloudy day ahead for Adelaide as well, and the same for Perth. In Darwin, a possible shower to come, and Alice Springs, it's going to be a sunny day. And that's ABC Late News. I'm Jade Barker. Thanks for your company.